Picture this, if you will. It's one of those scenes that feels like it's been burned into our collective memory. Something you'd see painted on the side of a Victorian biscuit tin or illustrated in a dusty old-school textbook.
I think I know exactly where you're going with this.
You probably do. It's a stone cottage in Scotland, mid-18th century. It's cozy. There's a fire roaring in the hearth. And sitting there is a young boy, just completely mesmerized.
The tea kettle.
The tea kettle. He's watching it boil. He sees the steam rising. He hears that hiss, and he watches the metal lid just chattering away, lifting up and dropping down over and over again.
And that's the moment.
That's the moment. Flash. The light bulb goes on. He realizes the raw power of steam. He grows up, builds an engine based on that kettle, and boom, the Industrial Revolution begins and the modern world is born.
It is a lovely image, truly. It's the Newton and the apple moment for the industrial age, isn't it? It suggests that genius is this, lightning bolt of inspiration that just strikes out of the blue.
Exactly. It's romantic. It's simple. But here's the thing. We have gone through this massive stack of sources you've pulled, the biographies, the economic papers, the patent records, his private letters, and it turns out that story is nonsense.
It is largely a myth, and what is fascinating is that it wasn't just an accidental rumor. It was a carefully constructed bit of public relations promoted heavily by his son years later to make him look like a predestined scientific messiah.
Right, because the reality we found in these documents is so much messier, grittier, and honestly, infinitely more interesting. We are not looking at a charming story about a tea kettle.
No.
We are looking at a story of industrial espionage. We're looking at a man who was plagued by crippling depression, who suffered from migraines so bad they left him bedridden for days.
We're looking at a man who was terrified of bankruptcy, who had to navigate the brutal realities of the 18th century economy, and who acted, according to some of the modern economists we've read, like a benevolent inventor and more like a ruthless patent troll.
And yet, this is the man whose name is literally the unit of power, the watt. You see it on every single light bulb in your house.
So that is our mission today. We are going to completely unpack the life of James Watt. We want to look past that marble statue in Westminster Abbey and find the actual human being underneath.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to trace his journey from the rough, slave trading ports of Scotland to the high-stakes patent courts of London.
And we have to ask the hard questions that the history books usually skip. Was he the singular hero of the Industrial Revolution? Or was he actually a bottleneck who held progress back to protect his own monopoly?
It is a complex question, but to answer it, we have to start at the very beginning. You cannot understand the machine if you don't understand the man. And you can't understand the man without the environment that forged him.
So let's rewind the clock. We are going back to January 19th, 1736. We are in Greenock, Scotland. Now, when I hear Scotland, I think of rolling highlands and sheep. But Greenock wasn't that, was it?
Not at all. Greenock is the context you need to grasp. At this time, it is a fishing village that is aggressively transforming into a major commercial port.
Okay.
The Union of 1707 had opened up trade with the Americas, and Greenock was booming. It was rough, it was noisy, it was dirty, and it was absolutely obsessed with trade.
And James Watt is born right into the thick of this. His family background is interesting because it seems to be this perfect collision of intellect and hard commerce.
That is a great way to put it. On one side, you have his grandfather, Thomas Watt. He was a math teacher and a navigation instructor. So the numbers gene, the academic inclination, that is already in the bloodline.
But his father, James Watt Sr.,
Yeah.
he's a different creature entirely. He's a shipwright, right? A merchant.
He is a man of action. He's the town treasurer at one point. He's a pillar of the community. But, and this is a detail in the sources that often gets glossed over in the heroic retellings, we have to look at where the money was coming from.
Right.
The Watt family wealth was not generated in a vacuum.
I was really struck by that in the notes. We often think of the Industrial Revolution as this purely technological event, disconnected from the uglier parts of history, but the capital fueling it.
It wasn't clean. The sources are clear on this. The family wealth was partially derived from trading in slave-produced goods, sugar, tobacco from the colonies, and involved in the logistics of the slave trade itself. Greenock was a hub for this.
So his dad was outfitting the ships.
James Watt Sr. was outfitting ships that were part of this global colonial economy.
Which puts the whole Industrial Revolution origin story in a stark light right from the get-go.
It does. It reminds us that this technological leap was funded by a global system that relied on enslaved labor. It's an uncomfortable truth, but It is the economic reality of 18th century Britain. That is the world James is born into.
But young James, he's not out there on the docks running the business, is he? He's not exactly this strapping young lad hauling ropes.
Far from it. He is an incredibly fragile child. The sources mention severe migraines, and when they say severe, they mean debilitating. These weren't just headaches. These were episodes that would shut him down completely, and they would plague him his entire life.
And because of that, he's considered too frail for regular schooling.
Right. He was often confined to the house. So his mother, Agnes Muirhead, she takes charge. And by all accounts, she was a forceful, well-educated woman. She decides to homeschool him.
And this might have been the biggest blessing in disguise of his entire life.
I think you are right, because instead of sitting in a damp classroom reciting Latin verbs, which was the standard curriculum, he is learning to read from her, but he's also picking up geometry and math incredibly early.
And crucially, he has the run of his father's workshops.
Yes. There's this great anecdote that instead of playing outside with the other kids, kicking a ball around, he's hanging out in the workshop.
Which is the best education he could have had.
Absolutely. He's not just reading about at angles. He's physically making things. He's working with wood. He's working with metal. He's taking apart his father's navigational instruments, compasses, quadrants, and putting them back together.
So he had that dexterity, that hands-on skill.
And that is crucial. We have to understand that later in life, when he's trying to build these precision machines, he isn't just a theorist. He isn't an academic in an ivory tower. He knows how to handle a file. He understands materials. He knows how wood splits, how metal bends. He is a craftsman first.
But that safe little world collapses when he's 18. Tragedy strikes.
His mother dies. And almost simultaneously, his father's business starts to tank.
Suddenly, the safety net is gone. The rich kid's status evaporates. James has to go earn a living.
And he decides he wants to be a mathematical instrument maker.
Which is a very specific high-end trade, making sextants, scales, precision tools.
Exactly. But you can't learn that level of precision in Greenock. So in 1755, he heads to London.
And this leads to what I call the London year. Now, usually when a young person goes to London, it sounds exciting, bright lights, big city. But reading his letters from this time, it sounds like a horror movie.
It was a time of extreme anxiety for him. First, there was the professional barrier. The guild system in London was incredibly rigid. Normally, to become a master instrument maker, you need to serve a 7-year apprenticeship.
And he's 18.
He's 18. He's too old to start a 7-year term, but he's nowhere near qualified to be a master. He's in this dangerous limbo.
So he essentially has to bribe a master to let him train.
Right. He pays for a shortcut. He finds a master willing to break the rules for a fee. Watt crams 7 years of training into one single year. He is working nonstop, damaging his health, trying to absorb every single technique.
But the work isn't the scary part. It's what's happening outside the shop.
The 7 Years' War is ramping up. The British Navy is desperate for men.
The press gangs.
Exactly. Press gangs are roaming the streets of London. And for those who don't know, these were groups of men legally authorized to kidnap able-bodied men off the street and force them into naval service.
And he's a perfect target.
He is a prime target. He's a Scot in London. He's young. He has hands that show he can work.
Imagine that pressure. You're grieving your mother. Your father is broke. You're working yourself to the bone to learn a trade in 1 year that usually takes 7. And you literally cannot step outside for a breath of fresh air because you might get snatched and thrown onto a frigate.
He writes letters home that are just full of fear. He barely leaves the workshop. He's living like a prisoner. It likely contributed to the anxiety and the fragile health that plagued him later, but he pulls it off.
He does.
He gets the skills. He survives the year.
So he returns to Scotland in 1756. He's ready to set up shop in Glasgow. He thinks, I'm trained, I'm ready, let's do business. And then he hits a brick wall.
Or rather, a guild wall. The Guild of Hammermen.
Which I have to say is a fantastic name for a villainous organization.
It does sound intense. They were the gatekeepers of metalworking in Glasgow, and they were powerful. They looked at Watt and said, hold on, you didn't serve your 7 years here. You aren't the son of a guild member. You are an outsider.
So, despite his skills, despite his top-tier training in London, they blocked him. He was effectively banned from opening a business in the city.
He's got the skills, he's got the tools, but he's locked out. This could have been the end of the story right here. James Watt, failed instrument maker, goes back to Greenock to fix fishing nets or something.
But he gets a lucky break. A very weird, specific lucky break involving astronomical instruments.
It's one of those historical accidents. The University of Glasgow had received a bequest of instruments from a benefactor in Jamaica, a man named Alexander Macfarlane. But during the sea voyage, the salt air and the rocking of the ship had damaged them.
They were a mess.
A total mess. And the Guild of Hammermen, they can't touch the university, right?
It's like diplomatic soil.
Exactly. The university is outside the Guild's jurisdiction. The professors realize Watt is the only guy around who has the skill to fix these complex instruments. So they invite him inside. They let him set up a workshop on campus.
This is such a pivotal moment. It changes him from a craftsman into something else.
It puts him in the room with the smartest people in Scotland. He isn't just fixing spectacles for the townspeople anymore. He becomes friends with Adam Smith.
The Adam Smith.
Yeah.
The father of economics.
The very same. And, even more importantly, he meets Joseph Black.
The chemist.
Yes. Joseph Black is the guy who discovers latent heat. Now, we don't need a full physics lecture, but this concept is crucial. Black realized that heat isn't just about temperature change. He realized that when water turns to steam, it absorbs a massive amount of energy without getting hotter.
But the energy is hidden in the steam.
Exactly. And Watt is soaking this all up. He's fixing fiddles and guitars to pay the bills, but he's having lunch with guys discussing, thermodynamics.
He becomes a philosophical mechanic. He understands the why, not just the how.
Precisely. And that sets the stage for the big moment, the catalyst.
The Newcomen engine. Okay, set the scene. It's 1763. Professor John Anderson brings Watt a model of a Newcomen engine.
He says, this thing is broken. It won't run for more than a few strokes. Fix it.
Now, we need to clarify something for the listener because this is a common misconception. James Watt did not invent the steam engine.
No, not at all. Thomas Newcomen invented it in 1712. By the time Watt sees this model, the steam engine has been around for 50 years. It's antique technology at this point.
So what was the Newcomen engine used for?
Pumping water out of coal mines. That's it. And it was a beast. It was massive, noisy, and incredibly inefficient.
How inefficient are we talking?
Well, the model Watt was fixing. He got it running, but he noticed something. It used a massive amount of steam for very little movement. It was just guzzling steam.
Why? What was the flaw?
Okay, think about how it worked. You have a big metal cylinder. You fill it with hot steam to push the piston up.
Right.
Then, to get the piston down, you have to create a vacuum. How do you do that? You spray cold water inside the cylinder to condense the steam.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You're heating the metal cylinder up with steam.
And then immediately cooling it right back down with cold water.
Every single stroke. Heat up, cool down. Heat up, cool down.
Exactly. And Watt, with his new understanding of latent heat from Joseph Black, realized that the engine was wasting about 3/4 of its energy just reheating the metal cylinder that it had just deliberately cooled down.
It's like trying to boil a pot of water, but every time it boils, you take it off the stove, dump ice in it, and then put it back on the stove to boil again.
That is a perfect analogy. It is a thermodynamic disaster.
So he sees the problem. But seeing the problem and fixing it are two very different things.
He obsessed over it for months. He couldn't figure out how to keep the cylinder hot while still condensing the steam. It seemed like a paradox. And then comes the famous Sunday stroll, May 1765.
The eureka moment.
Glasgow Green, he's taking a walk, and suddenly it hits him.
The separate condenser.
It sounds technical, but the concept is brilliant in its simplicity. Why cool the main cylinder? Why not let the steam escape into a separate box that is kept cold all the time?
So the main cylinder stays hot all the time. Steam does its work, then rushes out a valve into a cold box, the condenser, where it turns back to water and creates the vacuum.
Exactly. You never cool down the engine itself. This one idea promised to cut fuel consumption by 60 to 75%. It changed everything.
So he rushes back, builds a model, and it works. He's rich, right? Roll credits.
Oh, absolutely not. This is where we enter what investors today would call the valley of death.
The gap between a great idea and a working product.
And for Watt, it was a canyon, not a valley. Having the idea was easy. Building it was a nightmare. You have to remember, this is the 1760s. Metalworking technology was crude.
He needed an iron cylinder that was perfectly round to hold the steam pressure.
And he couldn't get one.
Yeah.
The best ironworkers in Scotland couldn't do it. The pistons didn't fit. Steam leaked everywhere. He tried wrapping it in cork, in oiled rags. I think he even tried horse manure at one point. Nothing worked perfectly.
And he's running out of money.
He is deep in debt. He partners with a guy named John Roebuck, who owns an ironworks. Roebuck puts up capital in exchange for 2/3 of the patent. But then Roebuck goes bankrupt in 1773.
So Watt is broke. His partner is bust. And then the personal tragedy hits.
His wife, Peggy Miller, she was his rock, by all accounts. She died in childbirth in 1773 while Watt was away surveying a canal.
This broke him, didn't it?
It devastated him. This is when he writes that famous line to his friend. "There is nothing more foolish than inventing." He was ready to quit.
I can't blame him.
He was taking odd jobs, surveying canals just to buy food. He was a widower, in debt, with a machine that leaked, and no partner. It was over.
It really is the classic dark night of the soul. But as in all good stories, a hero, or perhaps a savior figure, enters stage right.
Matthew Boulton.
Enter the capitalist.
Yes, and Boulton is everything Watt isn't, right?
Completely. Watt is dour, pessimistic, neurotic. He hates business.
Yeah.
Matthew Boulton is the owner of the Soho Manufactory in Birmingham. He's flamboyant, he's optimistic, he's wealthy, and he is a marketing genius.
Boulton sees the potential. He buys out the bankrupt Roebuck share of the patent.
He doesn't just buy the share. He buys Watt. He brings him to Birmingham. He says, "Stop worrying about money. I will handle the money. You make the engine work."
And he had the one thing Watt needed most. The world's best metalworkers at the Soho Manufactory. They could finally bore a cylinder accurately.
But there's a ticking clock. The original patent from 1769 is running out.
Right. Patents back then lasted 14 years. By 1775, they still haven't sold a single engine. The patent is almost dead. If it expires, anyone can copy Watt's idea.
So Boulton pulls some strings?
He goes to Parliament, he uses his connections, and he gets an unprecedented extension. The Act of 1775 extends Watt's patent until the year 1800.
25 more years.
It's a monopoly, a total monopoly on efficient steam power for a quarter of a century. This is the foundation of their empire.
And their business model was fascinating, too. They didn't just sell the engine like a car, did they?
No, this was Boulton's brilliance. They knew customers were skeptical, so they would install the engine and the customer would pay for the materials. But Boulton and Watt would charge a royalty.
And the royalty was based on performance.
Exactly. They would calculate how much coal the Watt engine saved compared to an old Newcomen engine. Boulton and Watt took 1/3 of the savings.
That is genius. We only get paid if you save money. It's a no-brainer for the customer.
It's the original sauce model steam as a service.
Nice. But they ran into a problem describing the power, didn't they? If you're talking to a brewer who uses horses to grind malt, and you say, "This engine has a cylinder volume of X," he doesn't know what that means.
He knows what his horses can do. So whatever the pragmatist, when he needed to be, came up with a unit of measurement. He watched mill horses working. He calculated that a strong horse could lift 33,000 pounds 1 foot in 1 minute.
Was that accurate?
It was probably a bit of an exaggeration. He rounded up to make his engine look better, but it became the standard horsepower.
So he could walk into a brewery and say, "This engine will replace 12 of your horses."
And the brewer would say, "Sold." It was a marketing gimmick that became a scientific standard.
So they're rolling now. The pumping engines are selling to the mines in Cornwall. But Boulton has a bigger vision. He doesn't just want to pump water. He wants to power the world.
He wants rotary motion.
Right. Up and down is great for a pump. But if you want to run a loom or a millstone, you need things to spin in a circle.
And here we hit another snag, the crank.
The simple crank. Like on a bicycle pedal, it turns up and down motion into round and round motion.
It seems obvious to us. But a rival inventor, James Pickard, had patented the application of a crank to a steam engine.
You could patent a crank.
Apparently so. And he wanted Boulton and Watt to pay him a license fee to use it.
And Watt, being the stubborn Scotsman.
He refused. He said, "I'm not paying for that." He was furious. So he had to invent a workaround, and he came up with the sun and planet gear.
This is a really cool piece of engineering. Instead of a simple crank, you have a gear on the end of the connecting rod, the planet, that revolves around the central gear, the sun.
It's actually better in some ways because it makes the main shaft spin twice for every one stroke of the engine. It's elegant.
Yeah.
And it totally bypassed the patent.
So they dodged the crank patent. Then comes the double-acting engine in 1782. What's that?
In the old engines, steam only pushed one way. Gravity or atmospheric pressure pulled the piston back. Watt figured out how to use valves to let steam push the piston down and push it back up.
So you double the power without increasing the size of the engine.
Exactly. But that created a new mechanical nightmare. If you're pushing up on a piston rod, a chain won't work. You can't push a chain.
Right.
You need a rigid rod. But the beam at the top of the engine rocks in an arc. If you attach a straight rod to a rocking beam, it'll bend or break.
So he needs to turn an arc into a straight line.
This led to what Watt considered his proudest invention. Not the condenser, The parallel motion?
It's a linkage, right?
Yeah.
A set of bars.
It's a 3-bar linkage. It looks like magic when you see it move. It guides the piston rod in a near-perfect straight line while the beam rocks. It's beautiful geometry in motion. He was so proud of it.
And then, to top it off, he adds the governor.
The centrifugal governor. You've seen the 2 metal balls spinning around.
Yeah, in old factories or cartoons, usually.
As the engine speeds up, the balls spin faster and fly outward due to centrifugal force. That motion pulls a lever that closes the steam valve, slowing the engine down. If it slows down too much, the balls drop, opening the valve.
It's automation. It's a feedback loop. The machine regulates itself.
It is the birth of cybernetics, in a way. The machine keeps itself stable.
So by the mid-1780s, they have the complete package. An efficient, powerful, self-regulating engine that can turn anything. The Industrial Revolution is officially unlocked.
It is, and here is where we get to the complexity of James Watt's legacy. Success made them aggressive.
This is section 6 in our outline. The monopolist.
Right. We have this image of Watt as the benevolent genius. But looking at the sources, specifically the arguments by economists like Boldrin and Levine, Bolton and Watt, were fierce litigators.
They sued everyone.
Anyone who came close to the separate condenser design, they had that patent until 1800, remember. That is a long time in a rapidly moving field of technology.
Tell me about the story of Jonathan Hornblower.
Hornblower was a brilliant engineer. He invented a compound engine using high-pressure steam in one cylinder and then letting it expand into a second, larger cylinder. It was actually more efficient than Watt's engine.
And what did Watt do? Buy him out? Collaborate?
He crushed him in court. He argued that Hornblower's engine used a separate condenser, which did, and therefore infringed the patent. Hornblower was financially ruined.
So you could argue that Watt actually stopped better engines from being built.
That is exactly the argument. Watt was also terrified of high-pressure steam. He thought it was dangerous. He called high-pressure engines devilish.
To be fair, boilers did explode back then.
They did. But by blocking research into high pressure, he delayed the invention of things like the steam locomotive, which needs high-pressure steam to be light and powerful enough.
Right. Richard Trevithick, the pioneer of the locomotive, was constantly blocked by Watt's patents and Watt's influence.
Yes. Watt even tried to get Parliament to ban high-pressure steam on safety grounds.
It raises a huge question. Did the patent system protect Watt's innovation, or did it end up stalling the Industrial Revolution by 30 years?
The evidence suggests that once Watt's patent finally expired in 1800, there was an explosion of innovation. Efficiency skyrocketed. High-pressure engines appeared everywhere. Steam trains appeared. It seems the monopoly acted as a dam, holding back the flood of progress.
And speaking of people held back,
Yeah.
we have to talk about William Murdoch.
Ah, the unsung hero.
Murdoch was their top employee, right? The guy they sent to Cornwall to fix the engines when the miners got angry.
Murdoch was a genius in his own right. He invented the oscillating cylinder, he invented the slide valve, and, crucially, he invented gaslighting.
The gas lights that lit up Victorian London. That was Murdoch.
He experimented with it in his house in Redruth. He lit up his whole house with gas. But Bolton and Watt didn't really pursue it aggressively at first. The saddest story, though, is the steam carriage.
The car.
In 1784, Murdoch built a working model of a steam locomotive. He called it the Flyer. There's a funny story where he was testing it at night on a church lane, and the local vicar walked by.
Oh, no.
The vicar saw this hissing, glowing, driverless machine coming at him in the dark and thought it was the devil. Ran away screaming.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So Murdoch had a working car model in 1784. Why didn't we have steam cars in the 1790s?
Watt stopped him.
Why?
Watt didn't want Murdoch distracted from the main business of erecting pumping engines in Cornwall. He discouraged him. He essentially forbade him from taking out a patent or pursuing it.
That is tragic. We could have had the transport revolution decades earlier.
It's the classic tension, isn't it? The established incumbent protecting their steady income versus the radical innovator pushing the boundaries. Watt, the former radical, had become the conservative incumbent.
So Bolton and Watt are making a fortune. They are part of the establishment. And this brings us to their social circle, the Lunar Society.
The Lunar Society of Birmingham. This is my favorite part of the era's social history.
Who were these guys?
It was an informal dinner club, a group of intellectuals, inventors, and industrialists who met during the full moon.
Why the full moon? Were they werewolves?
Practicality. No streetlights back then. They wanted to be able to ride their horses home safely after a night of, drinking wine and discussing philosophy.
And the guest list was insane.
It's a who's who. James Watt, Matthew Boulton, Erasmus Darwin.
Charles Darwin's grandfather?
Right. Josiah Wedgwood, the Pottery King. Joseph Priestley, who discovered oxygen.
It's like the inventors of the Industrial Revolution.
They called themselves the lunatics. They debated everything. Abolition of slavery, chemistry, electricity, democracy. This was the intellectual engine room of the Industrial Revolution. It wasn't just about making money. It was about applying reason to reshape the world.
Watt must have felt right at home there.
It was where he could relax. He wasn't the anxious businessman there. He was the philosopher, the respected scientist.
So let's go to the end. The year 1800 comes. The patent expires. Watt retires.
He retires a very wealthy man to Heathfield Hall. And this is where we see the softer side of Watt again.
The garret workshop.
Yes. He retreats to the attic. His second wife, Anne McGregor. The sources say she was quite strict about cleanliness. She didn't want his greasy, dusty experiments in the nice rooms, so she banished him to the attic.
And he stays up there, an old man in a leather apron, just tinkering.
Inventing for the joy of it. He wasn't trying to change the world anymore. He built machines to copy sculptures. He wasn't trying to revolutionize industry. He was just playing. When he died in 1819, the workshop was locked up and left exactly as it was, dust and all.
That's poignant. The machine stops, but the tools are still there.
He died at 83, a national hero. Statue in Westminster Abbey. And of course, in 1882, the British Association for the Advancement of Science names the unit of power after him, the watt.
So looking back at the whole picture, the frail boy, the struggling craftsman, the patent monopolist, the genius engineer, what is the takeaway?
I think the takeaway is that the Industrial Revolution wasn't inevitable. It required a specific convergence. It needed Watt's scientific insight, the condenser, but it also needed Boulton's capital and daring. And it needed the legal framework, for better or worse, of the patent system.
Watt didn't create the steam engine, but he made it practical. He perfected it.
He freed industry from geography. Before Watt, you had to build your factory next to a fast-flowing river for a water wheel, or right next to a coal mine. Watt's engine could go anywhere. It allowed the factory system to explode into cities.
It marks the beginning of the Anthropocene, the moment we switched from organic energy muscle, wood, water, to fossil fuels.
For better and for worse, we are still living in the world James Watt built. Every smokestack, every engine, every power plant traces its lineage back to that separate condenser.
And here's the final thought I want to leave you with. We celebrate Watt as an inventor, but his greatest skill might have been the legal and commercial moat he built around his ideas.
Indeed. It raises the question, is progress driven by the sheer brilliance of invention, or is it driven by the monopoly that allows the inventor to profit?
Something to mull over next time you boil a kettle.
Indeed.
That brings us to the end of this journey into the steam age. If you want to understand how the machines around you today trace their lineage back to these titans of industry, make sure you subscribe to History Titans.
Like this audio if you enjoyed the journey, and maybe share it with a friend who loves engineering history.
We'll see you next time.